Welcome to lesson 2.6, where we talk about the derivatives of tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant. So we're going to start by listing some of this stuff. So this should be all review. First off, use trig identities. Sine squared of x plus cosine squared, there should be an x there, equals 1. That's a trig identity that we learned a little while ago. Another trig identity, we know that tangent is sine of x over cosine of x. And we know that secant is 1 over cosine of x. So we're going to use those to find the derivatives of tangent and secant. So for tangent, let's start by converting tangent of x to sine of x over cosine of x. Because now we can use our quotient rule on this because we know the derivatives of sine and cosine. So we're going to say f of x is sine of x, g of x is cosine of x. So f prime of x would be cosine of x. G prime of x would be negative sine of x. Those are rules that we've learned in the past. Now we need to do the quotient rule. So quotient rule starts over here. So we've got cosine of x times cosine of x minus, then it goes over here, sine of x times negative sine of x, all over the second one, g of x squared. So let's start to simplify this. This is going to be cosine squared of x, which, just a reminder, cosine squared of x is the same thing as cosine of x squared. This just writes it a little easier. Two negatives make a positive, so plus sine squared of x all over cosine squared of x. Well, from our trig identity up here, we know that sine squared plus cosine squared, or cosine squared plus sine squared, because we can switch those around, is 1 over cosine squared. And we know that 1 over cosine is secant. So this is actually secant squared of x. So the derivative of tangent of x is secant squared of x. Now let's do something similar for secant of x. We're going to use our identities to change secant to 1 over cosine of x. And now we're going to use our quotient rule again. So f of x is going to be 1. G of x is going to be cosine of x. So then f prime of x is 0. G prime of x is going to be negative sine again. And now we do our quotient rule. The quotient rule starts over here. So we've got cosine of x times 0 minus, come over here, 1 times negative sine of x all over the second one squared. So that's going to cancel out because it's times by 0. I'm going to end up with a positive sine of x all over cosine squared of x. Now I'm actually going to split this up a little bit like this. So I just split up that cosine of x. And we can see that those are the same thing. But then I can change this first one to tangent of x times the second one, 1 over cosine, is secant of x. So the derivative of secant of x is tangent of x times secant of x. So right there, we can see the two we already know, and then we can see the two that we just proved, and then I'm giving you these last two. I'm not asking you to prove those ones. But these definitely all need to be memorized. These are your derivatives of your trig functions. In the next video, we're going to use all those derivatives to do a couple examples of applying all the derivatives we've learned so far.